My ranch had a small private airfield that I had maintained for years. One of the most important pieces of equipment was my wind gauge. It constantly measured wind direction and speed near the runway. I never expected the HOA to have a problem with it. The wind gauge wasn't decorative. It helped me understand the conditions around the airfield. Every reading was recorded as part of my regular maintenance routine. Keeping the equipment working was simply common sense. Then the HOA president came onto the property with a complaint. She said the wind gauge was an eyesore for the neighborhood. I explained that it was part of the airfield's weather equipment. She simply told me that it had to come down. I asked her to show me the HOA rule that applied to my airfield. She couldn't point to anything that gave them control over it. Instead, she repeated that the tower violated neighborhood appearance standards. I told her I would handle it through the proper channels. The next morning, I saw someone inspecting the tower. The HOA president had apparently brought a technician to the property. I immediately told them the equipment wasn't theirs to remove, but she insisted she had already given the order. The technician examined the equipment before touching anything. He asked who actually owned the weather station. I showed him the maintenance records and purchase documentation. The HOA president suddenly became much quieter. I went through every document connected to the airfield. The weather equipment was clearly listed as my private property. The tower was positioned entirely inside my recorded boundary. There was nothing giving the HOA authority over it. I called a county surveyor to verify the property line. He compared the current boundary with the original land records. Then he checked the location of the weather tower. His answer confirmed exactly what my documents showed. The entire weather station was inside my property boundary. The HOA boundary didn't reach anywhere near the tower. There was no easement giving them control over my equipment. The surveyor documented everything carefully. Then an airport inspector arrived to review the situation. He looked at the airfield, the runway, and the weather equipment. He asked me why the wind gauge had been removed. I told him the HOA had ordered someone to take it down. The inspector looked at the empty mounting bracket on the tower. Then he looked directly at the HOA president. He asked one simple question that changed the entire situation. Who authorized the removal? She started explaining that the HOA had authority over neighborhood appearances. The inspector listened without interrupting her. Then he asked whether the HOA owned the airfield equipment. She couldn't say yes. The inspector reviewed the property records and equipment documentation. The surveyor confirmed the tower stood completely inside my boundary. The inspector then explained why the wind information mattered around an airfield. The HOA's cosmetic argument suddenly looked very weak. The inspector explained that wind conditions were important information for safe airfield operations. He wasn't saying every private airfield needed identical equipment. He was making it clear that unauthorized removal was a serious mistake. The HOA president finally realized what she had done. The damaged weather equipment had to be inspected before being restored. The technician documented its condition and reinstalled the necessary components. Everything was handled through proper maintenance procedures. The wind gauge was finally back where it belonged. The inspector completed his review and documented the equipment condition. He confirmed the weather station had been restored properly. The property records also confirmed that the equipment was mine. The HOA had no authority to remove it. The HOA president tried one last argument about neighborhood appearance, but the property survey ended that discussion immediately. The weather tower was on private land with privately owned equipment. She had crossed a boundary she never should have crossed. After the inspection, everything returned to normal. The wind gauge was recording conditions again. The airfield equipment remained exactly where the property records said it belonged. And the HOA had learned an expensive lesson about private property. I never want to fight with the HOA. I only wanted them to respect the boundaries of my property. The inspector's one question exposed the entire problem. They had removed something they had never owned. The HOA thought they could simply order my wind gauge removed. Instead, their decision brought an airport inspector to my property. One question exposed who had authorized the removal. And after that day, they never touched my airfield equipment again.